Hey, what's good? What's good? This your man Wood. Kind of a just an extension of the Pay Me No Mind podcast. Haven't done a formal podcast or a proper podcast in 2018. Trying to do some different things. Don't want to go into a long story, but anyway, last night I put up a video recapping what's going on with Lena Waithe's new series on Showtime, The Shot. Just wanted to see if anybody was checking for it. On the podcast, I talk about a lot of different television shows or different series, and recap a couple of different ones. And since I'm experimenting with some live streaming, just thought that we'll dive into the shot. One quick thing that I mentioned. Actually, I'm gonna jump around. I'm gonna tell you my one big question about the series, even though it's just into or through its third episode, season one. But I'm gonna get my one big question out there. I might do some of the recap that I did last night. Ended it like right at 30 minutes, stayed all in my time and everything, and was happy. And then my man Christopher Carlson from Rope Dope Radio hit me up and was like, "Hey, no sound." And sure enough, my wife had messed around with something, or I probably did. I'm just using her as a scapegoat. But I went through my whole thing last night, and it was not even the mic wasn't even hot. But anyway, one quick update. Sitting here watching the Spurs as I get through this, but shortly, my fantastic mini studio right here, my 2.6 or 2.5 feet of cubic space for my current studio. I'll be leaving it here in a little over a month. Just got a final update on my new house, and you know, part of that move was to get a room and dedicate it to kind of what I want to do with Pay Me No Mind moving forward. So eventually, I'll be rolling out kind of my space that won't be this congested tight shot of what I'm doing. But let's get to the shot. The shot comes on Sunday nights at 10 p.m. on Showtime. Like I said, it was created and I think it's written by Lena Waithe. I don't know a lot about her, but I guess she stars in co-stars in Master of None. I've only watched an episode and a half of that, but I do want to get back into that once I get into my house and get my own Fire Stick back. You know, to get to watching content the way that I do and binge watching stuff when I want to. Right now, I'm kind of sharing my father-in-law's um, not YouTube, but a Netflix account with him, and I just don't have access to watch everything that I want. So, but anyway, that's Lena Waithe. She just did a lot of work out at Sundance, the film festival out in Utah. I think that went down last week. Um, she kind of took over the Sundance something. She did quite a bit out there. A lot of publicity for her and what she has going on. In part revolving around the Shy. Like I said, the Shy is about 3 weeks into its series or into its season one. And my major question off that I don't want to say I'm losing interest in the show, but I don't know where it's going because I'll get to some of the characters here in a minute. But the main character, or one of the main characters, is Brandon, who's played by Jason Mitchell from Straight Outta Compton. And also, you saw my Mudbound review video, which was a little lengthy. Um, he was also a major star in that movie, but this is kind of his show. And his brother was killed in the pilot episode. His brother Coogie, who was a pretty likable character. Who once you were introduced to him, you thought he was going to stick around for a minute, and you were looking forward to figuring out who or seeing what the kids what his arc was going to be. he was that kind of intriguing character in just one episode. But anyway, but at the end of the episode, which was available on YouTube on Showtime's channel, like a month before the show hit regular Showtime and on demand, digging into this Hop Slam, uh, Bell's Brewery. I hate drinking out of cans, but not being in my own house, I don't have my right glasses right now. So anyway, savage. But um, his brother gets killed, Coogie gets killed, and he gets killed by a man named Ronnie, whose son was shot down in the beginning of the episode. And Coogie was near the body, seen near the body, and word got around in the streets that he had something to do with this kid being killed. This kid was a superstar basketball player, so he's real popular in the neighborhood. But word gets back to Ronnie, who killed his son. So when Coogie gets released from he was detained by the police and questioned, but this detective Cruz figures out that obviously this kid didn't have nothing to do with it. So they cut him loose. The detective Cruz and Brandon meet each other as Brandon comes to pick his younger brother up from the police station. They have exchanged some words, and Detective Cruz says, "Hey, your brother's a smart kid, a bright kid. Keep him out of trouble." Cool. He gives him his card and says, "Hey, anytime you need something, don't hesitate to give me a call." Brandon is trying to be a chef. He's trying to get onto the line instead of doing just food prep at this restaurant that he works at, but he wants to eventually open his own restaurant with the help of his live-in girlfriend, Jerica. Um, but anyway, getting back to my question, Ronnie he chases down and confronts Coogie. Coogie has on his dead son's chain, and they go to tussling a little bit, arguing a little bit. Coogie's like, "Here, just take the chain, just take it." And Ronnie kills him in cold blood next to this corner store. And when this happens, this young kid, Kevin, who's another major star, one of the major arcs of the show, Kevin witnesses him and his two friends are walking, and Kevin witnesses the actual shooting. As Ronnie runs off after the shooting, after Coogie's body falls, he runs by this van and realizes that Kevin is there. He sees him, and Kevin is like, "Hey, I didn't see anything. I didn't see anything." Ronnie goes and runs off and goes back home, goes back to his girlfriend, Tracy, the mother of the boy. I don't think Ronnie is the biological father, but he was in his life a long time. I think that's one detail that came out of it. But anyway, Kevin, however it happens, Kevin and Brandon link up as Brandon tries to dig into the streets to see what happened. Um, and Kevin takes Brandon to see Ronnie, where he lives, where he hangs out. And he shows Brandon who killed his younger brother. Now, my big question is, here it is, 3 episodes in, and I guess the relationship between the black community and police is that frayed to where Brandon is trying to, he's contemplating getting revenge, taking the law into his own hands, and doling out some street justice to to avenge his brother's death. But he's clearly not built like that. So he's been sitting around mourning over his deceased brother, and like not even spending every waking moment trying to go to get Ronnie. Ronnie is rekindling his relationship. It was estranged with Tracy, but now that the son is dead, it's giving them a moment to kind of rekindle whatever they had. but Ronnie doesn't work. We don't even know what the hell Ronnie does. Um, Him and two guys that are kind of his crew, that are kind of some comic relief on the show, but we don't even know what Ronnie does. We're 3 episodes in. Just a dude in the neighborhood. So, like I said, Ronnie's going on about living his life, and Brandon, like here and there, gets pissed off enough to go to think about doing something about his brother, but he's already been back to work. I guess he eulogized his brother at the funeral. He's went and tried to see what's going on with his mother, who is Sonia San, played by Sonia San from The Wire. Her name is Laverne. He's been over there and argued with her and her boy live-in boyfriend a number of times. And then like every blue moon, he's like, oh, let me go pay this dude back. So he tries to buy a gun, punks out, and rightfully so. I'm not from the streets either. But that's like I said, my thing is, why haven't you went to the detective? You have credible information. Now I don't know if Kevin doesn't want to snitch, and he mentions that about the whole thing in the streets about not snitching. But this isn't snitching. Like you saw a young man be killed. So this isn't somebody who's facing some time who gives somebody else up who has nothing to do with this. You just saw a crime committed. So like I said, I don't know why Brandon just can't go to Detective Cruz, who said some nice things about your brother. Like you just couldn't have a conversation with him and gauge whether or not it's worth doing anything. So that's where I'm kind of stuck with the show. I really, in some ways, I could just be done with it right now. In this last episode, um, Ronnie went and got rid of the gun that he used to shoot Coogie. Somebody just joined. If you stick around for a minute, I might check you out in the chat room. But he's went and gotten rid of the gun, trying to wash his hands of the situation and move on with his, trying to rekindle his relationship with Tracy. But then Cruz pulls up on him in the middle of the night. Cruz has put two and two together and said, "Look, I came and got you." Oh, that's the whole connection there. Cruz uses Ronnie as a CI, a criminal informant. Maybe that's his job. Maybe that's how he makes money. So Cruz came and picked up Ronnie at his spot and took him to the morgue when his son's body popped up, and he let him know that his son had been killed. But while they say some things, he lets them know that I'm on to this kid that I need to question, and kind of gives Coogie's description. Coogie was very unique because he had this huge afro, and he rode around on his bike. Like I said, he was a very extroverted kid, very talkative, and well known and well liked in the neighborhood. So Ronnie puts two and two together, and that's how he found Coogie. So now where we're at, Brandon didn't he messed up the gun buy, gets beat up by the dude who was trying to sell the gun to him and his coworker. Um, and he's coming home from work at the end of episode 3, and Kevin is standing across the street in the middle of the night. He's like 10 years old or something, or 12, maybe 12. And he's like, Kevin is like, I need to talk to you. Earlier in the show, Kevin was freaking out because Ronnie has been looking for him. So he's been running and hiding from Ronnie, but his two partners convince him, hey, why don't you just step to Ronnie and tell him that you're not gonna roll on him. You're not gonna say anything about what you saw. And he goes and seeks out Ronnie later that night. Ronnie talks to him. He pops up at Brandon's house and he asks Brandon, "Hey, can you walk me home? I just came to say blah 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 to you, but now can you walk me home?" So Brandon, no weapon, unbeknownst, there's something that's going on. They get down to this park and it's this tunnel, and excuse me, it's this tunnel. They stop, and Ronnie comes out, and now Brandon is face to face with the guy who killed his brother. I don't know how much time has elapsed. Maybe a week or so, week and a half. But these dudes are face to face, and the show goes off. Now, another thing that pissed me off with the show was that it was only a 48-minute episode. Uh, I don't know. That kind of pissed me off because last year on Homeland started ending episodes at like 42 minutes, 44 minutes. Like we've already lost, 3 episodes from when The Sopranos, The Wire, maybe Boardwalk Empire, but all of those, top notch series all went from 13 episodes, for their 5 to 6, 7 seasons. I think The Sopranos might have had 8 seasons, but it used to be 13 or 12 episodes. Now we're down to 10. But now a 48-minute episode, which I mean, I guess um, if you look at network TV and you factor in commercials, I guess maybe 48 minutes is kind of standard. But I guess to leave us at that cliffhanger with Brandon and Ronnie facing each other with 12 minutes to go, we could have saw something. And then like the previews for the next episode, the fourth episode of season one, it really didn't show a whole lot. It didn't give you much to go on at all. I don't even think they showed Brandon or Ronnie. But I think there is another teaser or mini trailer or what have you for episode 4 that something goes on where I don't know. That's the thing that's bringing me back for episode 4. And I'm a little confused because episode 2 was actually on demand, like maybe like middle of the week. You could watch episode 2 before it debuted on Sunday night, on TV. So that's kind of my main issue with the show is that obviously the relationship with the black community and the police department in Chicago, probably much like most major metropolitans. This whole at odds thing between police and citizens. But again, like I said, Brandon is just clearly not a street dude. So I don't understand why he hasn't gone and talked to the police officer. I mean, hell, Trey, was it Trey in Boys in the Hood? He only needed like half a night, to realize that, hey, I know my man Ricky is gone, but dope, pull over and let me get out the car, man. And what y'all getting ready to go do, that's not my thing. I'm out. So I don't know when Brandon is gonna have that epiphany and realize that oh, this is the Spurs and the Cavs. I didn't even realize that. But anyway, that just has kind of thrown me for a loop with where I am with the show. But other than that, for anybody that's still around or stays past this part, just to kind of talk through some things. Excuse me. And that's another thing before I go on. We got 2 bodies in 24 hours of young teenagers. And maybe this is what the Shy is about, is that nobody's doing anything in the city of Chicago, despite all of the, you know, the war zone type casualty numbers that we've heard about the last 3 to 5 years coming out of Chicago, that nobody is doing anything. And I mean, I'm familiar with the Laquan McDonald incident or police shooting. So I know, and then it's a boxer. If you know the Pay Me No Mind show, I cover quite a bit of boxing. But Ed Brown, I believe, Ed Brown was an up and coming welterweight who was gunned down a little over a year ago. Now, maybe a year and a month, about a month. And I haven't heard anything on an investigation into who killed him. He was sitting in a car with the female or something. So I guess maybe that's just what the Shy is all about. Is that nobody cares about what's going on in the inner city Chicago. But it just seems like, weren't no bodies dropping with McNulty and Bunk and Freeman on the wire, and Lieutenant Daniels, bodies were involved, even Burrell down at City Hall, um, you know, there was activity on a body. But it just seems like in Chicago, and then like I said, Cruz, the detective, he's put two and two together and went and confronted Ronnie and told him that I know you had something to do with this. But now here it is, two shows go by, or a show and a half actually, since he confronted Ronnie, and he hasn't done anything about it. So just like the sense of urgency on the show is really killing me. But let me so that's kind of catching you up. That's the gist of it. Just to walk you through the cast real quick. Jason Mitchell, like I said, is the one of the main stars, is Brandon. Um Alex Hibbert plays like 12-year-old Kevin. Intari Guma and Bajo Mawine is Ronnie Davis. He's an interesting character. He's worked quite a bit, but not in much that I've seen him in. But for him to be a central character, it's like when you meet him, they have him looking like he's like 60 years old, or late 50s or something. But then when you see that he's involved with Tracy, and the boy that gets killed is his kind of adopted son or whatever, you realize that maybe he's supposed to be a younger man, or maybe late 30s or something. But his body and the way that he acts, and kind of just the way that the character is being portrayed, he looks like a much older man. But who else is in there? Like I said, Sonia Son is Laverne. Tiffany Boone plays Jerica, who is Brandon's live-in girlfriend that's involved in real estate. Armando Riesco is Detective Cruz. Jacob Lattimore, former, I think he's still singing R&B. I just don't think his career really took off based on where R&B is right now. So it looks like he's focusing more on acting, but he plays Emmett. And then Stephen Williams, who played Captain Adam Fuller on 21 Jump Street from like 87 to 1991. And also was a hilarious episode of Martin as Simon, who was the guy that was going to marry Pam. And they went to the Detroit Pistons game and sat in the luxury box. That guy. He's just been introduced as a character named Quentin Dickinson. And so one funny thing about the Shy is I believe we were introduced to the kids first. And even in a lot of the promo and the trailer and everything, it really focused on like Kevin and his two partners walking to school and going through the hallways of their school and whatnot. And it was kind of a weird way to roll the show out, that we would be introduced to three kids, preteen kids. And that's been one thing that I've seen online, is just a lot of profanity from amongst these three friends. And one thing that I mentioned last night was that Kevin has a DL Hughley type MF on him. I mean, he's uh he's going pretty hard with the language, and I think that's throwing some people off. One thing that threw me off was Emmett is kind of like maybe early 20s. He's a a sneakerhead. He lives at home with his mom, and in the first episode, when we're introduced to him, he's trying to get some from his girlfriend before his mother comes home, and they show her in full nudity, and her name is Keisha. Keisha looks like she's about 15 in the body, and it just they've shown her like every episode. I think they've shown her fully nude, and I just feel like I'm watching child porn or something. Like, and Keisha is Kevin's older sister. I think she might even still be in high school in her character. But who else is on here? So, like I said, they started with the kids. We got to know Brandon a little bit, and Coogie. We learned a lot about Coogie. But then we started spend a lot of time with the kids, and Kevin is a young lady that he's fond of. That him and his friends are they're egging him on about, um, him trying to be her boyfriend or whatever they're gonna do. And they spend a lot of time on that. We're kind of learning about the police force a little bit, and then maybe in the last episode and a half, or towards the end of episode one, we started learning who the street people are. There's a lot of comparisons with The Wire, and I think it's kind of doing this show a disservice because The Wire was phenomenal, but that's one thing. It's like who's gonna be Stringer Bell and Avon or Marlowe, and so if that's what you're interested in, we're slowly meeting them, and there goes my mouse. Uh, Barton Fitzpatrick plays Reg, who was kind of like on the streets working for some dude named Trice. We just met in episode 3. And then Reg has a little street team or a corner team that's running a corner and probably a stash house. And then, like I said, Stephen Williams is playing Quentin. He's returned to the city. This guy's like mid 60s, I'm assuming. But he wants to. It's kind of a little mysterious what's going on with him, but it's like he wants to come back to the city, and it's almost like he wants to reclaim some things. Trice, who's the leader of Reg's crew, um, is actually like a mentee or something of Dickinson or Quentin. And when Quentin left, it's like the organization kind of he inherited. So now he's come back and he's trying to kind of like take over, but he's very concerned about the violence, and he's very upset that this young boy, this high school basketball star, was killed. So we're trying to figure out what he's doing, and then also the main thing that's going on right now is to see what Brandon is gonna do with Ronnie. So that's what we'll be jumping into next week. I guess we'll figure out how this face to face showdown between Brandon and Ronnie plays out, and that's kind of what the big tease is, to see how that plays out this week. I know I talked to my cousin on Twitter, and I said this episode was kind of a wasted episode. Not a lot was done, and he mentioned that he fell asleep on it. So, I don't want to tear down the show right now. It's still kind of finding its footing. It's a lot of positive things about the show as far as entertainment value and whatnot. I'm gonna continue to rock with it and give it a chance. And I just want to see where it goes with Brandon. Obviously, like I said, for some of the shows that I'm gonna start recapping on here. Sometimes I'm gonna do live streams. Sometimes I might do a 3 to 5 minute video that I put together and just drop it up here and do a recap on the show. I guess for me, I like underdogs, so I feel like some of these shows don't really have anybody doing anything to for the community that follows these shows beyond just somebody making a Twitter account, and people half-heartedly do weigh in on some things there. But I'm gonna start talking about some shows here in this forum, and like I said, I'll probably do it in one of two different ways as far as live streaming some stuff, and especially when I get my room set up at my next house, hopefully working more with a chat room or something and shedding some light on these series that don't get enough light shined on them from the typical like a channel or something. Or if you watch The Wire, they were horrible about not being nominated and not being an award winner. I think they were only nominated a handful of times out of the 5 seasons, or once or twice. So trying to get my mouse real quick. But anyway, holler at me on Twitter if you have if you want to or leave some comments, and let's talk about what's going on with the Shy. Let me know if you're gonna stick around with it, or if it's not working for you. And we'll see what happens next week. I'll probably come back on maybe like next Monday or Tuesday and recap, what goes on this Sunday. So again, as I end all my podcasts, you don't have to be great to start, but you have to start to be great. Peace. Oh, and like I said on Twitter, at capital E underscore pluribus pluribus underscore WOOD. That's Wood. And if you want to holler at me on the podcast Twitter page, that's or Twitter account, that's at PMNM Haven. Pay me no mind, Haven. We can do it over there. But other than that, like I said, I'll be here talking about the shows because when I go to the barber shop, it's two situations. It's 10 people that nobody has cable. Nobody can afford cable, or just, that's not part of their how they spend their money. Or then you got somebody that makes more money than me and just doesn't believe in wasting money on cable. So I'm walking around to all these people with some phenomenal shows to talk about and to recap and whatnot, and nobody ever knows what the hell I'm talking about. So I'm going to come on here and talk about the stuff that I like. And if you rock with any of it, then I guess we link up. And if not, then I guess we don't. But that's what the Pay Me No Mind show is going to go into, continuing on with sports and entertainment. Later on this week, I got a couple of some content from this past weekend's card in Brooklyn at Barclays Center. I got a couple of exclusive interviews. I just haven't put the videos together yet. And then I realized that they were live streaming the post fight press conference where somebody let me know they heard me ask a few questions of the fighters. But when I know that, it was really no impetus to come back from Brooklyn and throw together some videos of that were already live streamed on Facebook. So that killed that. But I do have a couple of discussions that that I was able to get, and I'll make some videos of them probably this weekend. So again, peace.